And the first speaker that we're meeting tonight is Lizette. And Lizette and I go way back because we used to live together in a co-living space called Nest. So I know her very, very, very well, dear friend. And you're going to talk about how to uncover the deep behavioral roots of dark pattern. Da, 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 da. So come up and take it away. Give it up for Lizette.
Thank you so much, Helena. Good evening, everyone. I am super happy to be here. And we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about one of my favorite topics, the behavioral science of all things design. By training, I'm an economist. I went to that school in New Jersey called Princeton. Then I became a service design type of person. I've also built different digital products, mostly in education and labor market. So I also do have some practical experience besides academia. Okay, being an economist, I have to warn you that my slides are going to be pretty ugly, but hopefully I'll make up for it with the contents. So what these statements are, let's start with those. Design is an attempt to manipulate behavior, manipulate not in a necessarily negative way, right? We can want to delight and inspire. We can rouse a team to do something great. We can also deceive, we can also lie, etc. But it's an attempt to manipulate behavior because we obviously can't have full control of other people no matter how much we try. Now, technological development is fast, evolution is slow. So basically the same things that made people susceptible to propaganda, to misinformation 1,000 years ago, 500 years ago, etc. Those are the same things that makes us susceptible to those things today. So human evolution is very, very, very slow. So it means that basically how we work as human beings, it changes over millennia, not over anything like decades, like with technology. So the things that we're talking about today, they are going to be relevant for your work 50, 100, maybe even also 1,000 years from now, but none of us are going to live that long, fortunately. Okay. So I'm not really going to give a definition of dark patterns, but one of the things that we commonly hear is that we're in the realm of dark patterns when we're working against what people want, right? So I am a consumer, or I'm a colleague, or whatever I am, and I want to do something. Dark patterns or manipulative behavior in this type of dark way is about making it hard for people to do what they want. It could also be things that I don't want to do, things that I don't want to listen to or see, or things that I don't want to interact with. A dark pattern type of design can make it hard for me to avoid that, right? So it's working against a stated goal or intention that I have. That's one way of looking at it. There are many other ways of looking at it, but this is just a starting point. So is it that simple? Dark versus beneficial, if we're, or whatever we should call the opposite of dark patterns, where we, make it easy for people to do things they want, like recycle more or something like that, or make it easy for people to avoid things that they don't want. That could be an angle, a perspective on this, if we're in sort of the bad realm or the good realm. The problem with that is that preferences, what we want, can be really many things that are anything but well-defined. So for example, we can have incomplete preferences. It means that, let's say, So ChatGPT is a new thing. And as a consumer, I'm only experiencing this anew. I don't even know what it is yet. So how can I make up my mind what I think about it and what I want to do with it or not do with it compared to other technologies? They can also be context dependent, meaning in some settings, like when we're at home with our family, we may have certain preferences, things we want to do. But in other settings, like if we're at work or if we're hanging out with our partner, we maybe want to do other things, or we prefer other things, other actions. They can also be information dependent. So things like, well, that's kind of going into what I mentioned earlier, but if we don't have enough information about the opportunities, for example, to live a more sustainable lifestyle, how could we even begin to navigate that, right? So I may have not the right knowledge for me to achieve what I want. They can also be conflicting, right? So for example, in the short run, I would really like to maybe enjoy like some really delicious food, but in the long run, maybe I want to get in better shape. I'm learning how to walk again, as you can see, after I broke my ankle. And so my long-term goals are to get well with my ankle, but my short-term goals might just be to enjoy life with my friends. What I want in the short term can conflict with what I want in the long term. And that makes it, oops. Okay, I can't go back, but sorry. Yes, I'm trying, but okay, wait, here. Thank you. Right, so it's not that simple because we don't always really know what we want, or it's unclear. We could change our minds. We could also have conflicting goals, and conflicting goals may be one of the hardest things for us to deal with, because we can have two things we want, but they are sort of in conflict with each other. They will be a trade-off. So as designers, as product makers, what is it? Which one of the two are we going to help people achieve, and how is that going to affect their other goals in life? Okay. When I work on things related to user experience or design, I usually think about user experience as an iceberg, right? So that's the waterline. On top, we have all of the aesthetic qualities, right? It's not just if things are beautiful, but just everything about how things look and feel, etc. This is what we can see, what is tangible, what we can touch, smell, etc. Then underneath that is that piece of the iceberg called nudging. How many of you guys have heard about nudging? All right, so pretty much everyone. I'm very happy to see that. That's not what we're going to talk about today. As you can see from the green color, we're going to talk about the sort of deeper behavioral mechanisms that we can play on. This is something that, you know, I think everybody in here, whatever you're doing, you are interacting with stuff that's down here. You may not do it knowingly, but you certainly are. Every time you write an email newsletter or you design a user interface, you are tapping into some of the stuff. So hopefully today is going to help you at least, you know, become more conscious of what is it that I'm tapping into and what do I want to do with that. I do want to say a little thing about nudging. So just a side note, right? Because maybe 5 to 10 years ago, nudging was this wonder tool, right? Everybody hyped it so much. And it's like the UK made like a nudge unit, and in the government, right? Same thing happened in the United States. Nudging was going to solve everything from, you know, child poverty to the climate crisis, etc. We thought that we could move mountains with a shovel. That's not possible, but it's still a useful tool, right? We use it these kind of nudging insights. How can we spur people to choose one option over another, or there is an obvious path for us to follow at the airport, all kinds of things. They are useful, but they're not that, I mean, it's not a tool, it's not a panacea that will solve everything for us. And even what I'm going to talk about, the lower layer, is also not going to solve everything for us, but it is important to be aware of. Now, why is it that I'm talking about this topic? So in 2020, I was working at the Rockwell Foundation, designing services for education and mental health, etc. And one of the things that we really wanted to get into was all of this research that exists, not just on behavioral economics, but on social psychology, neuroscience, etc. How can we use that in the way we build services, or in the way we understand the problems that young people, schools, etc. are facing? So out of this work, we created this toolbox in collaboration with Christina from today's studio, who is sitting right here. That's why it looks great. That's definitely not my contribution. But we made a toolkit that sort of said, okay, let's pack some of this. I think I read maybe 200 research papers or something like that, and talked to a bunch of professors from all over the world. And we ended up packaging it in a way that everybody can sit down and use this without an expert in the room, so that the knowledge and how you can apply the knowledge, you're being guided on that journey step by step. But this work forms the basis of what I'm going to talk about next. But just know that there is something like a really useful tool for you to engage with if you want to take this work further. It's free. Right now it's in Danish. It's a physical version, as you can see, as well as digital. But later this year, it's going to be in English as well. So I'm gonna let you all know through Helena and Copenhagen UX when that will be available. So a few observations before we really dive in. So first of all, I don't know if I had to say this, but I kind of feel like I just have to make this very clear. This whole discussion of nature versus nurture is a really pointless discussion. There's literally no serious scientist who would say that it's one or the other. It's always both. It's always how they interact. The genetics that we carry, the context and environment that we live in, and the individual experiences that we have. All of those things shape us as human beings and our abilities, etc. The second thing is that the human brain develops throughout our life, right? It develops super rapidly when we are little kids, 0 to 3 years old. It also develops really fast when we are adolescents. So from around 12, 13 years old until maybe 25. But it doesn't stop developing after that. Every experience that we have, just even sitting here today, is changing stuff in our brains. That's why we maybe think differently about things, we remember different things, etc. So those are two things to keep in mind. As I mentioned before, behavioral science is really still a work in progress. So some things I say today, I don't think that necessarily will be invalidated, but we will have more nuance and better understanding as this field progresses. So in 5 years, if I was going to give a talk, or even maybe just in 2 years about this topic, I would be saying things a little differently. Another thing is that most scientific studies are concerned with average difference between men and women, between whatever kind, between countries, etc. All of these things are averages. So averages is an important way for understanding the world, but it is not something we can use to predict anything about an individual person, right? And so I'm saying this because when you see a headline anywhere in a TV news report, a newspaper article, journal, etc., the headline is always about, okay, if you do this, then you have so much more risk of contracting cancer, 3 times more, something like that. That is true on average, right? That is what the study says. It is not a deterministic prediction for everybody who's doing this thing or eating this thing or whatever the study was about. So please keep that in mind. Whenever you see a scientific result, it's most likely about the averages. And you can't say, oh, this will happen to me if I do this thing or if I don't do this thing. Okay. So let's start with the oldest parts of the human brain. The things that some people would term survival instincts. These are some of the most effective things. We all know that feeling, fear, if we are afraid of something, right? If we feel disgust, if we feel disgusted about something, maybe we smell something that's really bad, that is a part of our survival instincts in a sense, because it tells us we should probably avoid this because if we eat it, it might be poisonous, right? And it's going to kill us. So some of these things, reflexive responses, we all have been there, right? Fight, flight, freeze, feelings of disgust. I am saying this because since these are some of the oldest parts of our human brain, but also of a lot of other animals' brains, these are really powerful. They are powerful because if we push, in a sense, some of these buttons, these basic buttons of surviving as a species, then we are in this realm where we could see really strong reflexive responses. That's why, as designers of anything, these feelings are fundamental, and they're also dangerous in the sense that we can really use them to make people do horrible things to each other. We can also really use them for very good purposes. But the point to take away, I guess, is that they are powerful. Gotta watch the time. Another big component part is all this about identity and social status. I mean, we are the only species who can feel insulted if people don't believe in the same things that we do, right? That's quite amazing. And it's because things like, who am I? What is my role in this world? Which relations are important to me? If you ask most people who they are, they may say, I'm a mother, or they may say, I'm an economist, or they may say, they say all of these things that says a little bit about them, but also about defining them in relation to other people. So how do these other people perceive me? What do I want to signal to other people? How would I like the world to think about me? These things are part of sort of a newer development in this brain physiology, the prefrontal cortex, which is this part behind this part of our brains. And they are also really fundamental to how we navigate the world. These can engender like questions of this, both threats to identity, but also, you know, people affirming who you are. People, when you have this phrase, people want to be seen, heard, recognized. Yes, we do. And these are also drivers that are really strong in terms of when we are designing different kinds of experiences. So that's the second big theme of behavioral science. Another thing that's important, and that may go into maybe some of the things we will hear later, is how do we actually make decisions, right? So when I started my first year as economics student, you know, the theory books were like, there is this perfectly rational human being that calculates everything according to a utility function. That is not true. So the purely rational decision doesn't exist, but the purely emotional decision, besides the things we saw about the survival instincts responses, the reflexive responses, the purely emotional decision hardly ever really exists, because cognition, how we think about the world and analyze the world intentionally, and emotion, they are combined in how we make decisions. One of the things that helps us make decisions, for example, is that let's say I'm going into a negotiation, and the last time I went into a negotiation, I had a good experience when the conversation turned in a certain direction, right? So it's not only rationally that I process that, okay, if the negotiation is going in this direction, then it's more likely to be good for me, and I need to do more of that. but it's also because that experience encodes the sensation, the feeling of being in that situation with something that is good, right? So when we are in that situation, if it occurs again, it's not just that we analytically can realize that that is what is happening, but our emotional response to that, because of our prior experiences, is helping us to figure out what kind of situation are we actually in. Is that a good situation or is that a bad situation? And what does it mean for what I'm going to do next? So this applies also to things like when we're doing online shopping, which is going to be one of the themes later, right? That there is not, we can't just, in the human brain, we cannot separate this emotion, cognition. So both of these things are at play at the same time. Obviously, as designers, we can choose to try to suppress one, try to suppress the other. And that's going to affect how people make decisions. But we make most of our good decisions when we have sort of a balanced approach to that, or a balanced context that allows us to engage both parts of ourselves. Second observation is we do respond to incentives and rewards. That's probably something all of you also have experience with. But we don't always respond in the way it's intended to by the designer. So there was an experiment, for example, where in Israel some years back, when parents in a kindergarten, they were not picking up their children at the right time. So there were always kids who were, late after hours, and the staff had to stay longer, right? And then somebody thought, okay, well, let's just impose a fine. Let's impose a fine for when people are late with their kids. And so you would think that would work, that people would do it less, but no. Instead, people thought, well, this is a service I can purchase. It's another menu on the options. So more people just paid the fine and picked up their kids late, right? So incentives are super tricky. They are tricky to economists. So they're definitely also tricky to everybody else. So that's something to be very careful about when we're thinking about anything to do with, it could be rewards, loyalty programs, all kinds of stuff. Performance systems at work. Unexpected things are going to happen if you don't think carefully about how people are actually going to perceive the situation. Lastly, but also maybe important, is that our brains respond in a worse way. We experience it in a worse way when there's uncertainty about what's going to happen than if there are certain bad outcomes, like if we know that some bad outcomes are going to happen. So this is also important to keep in mind when we are actually designing stuff. And I am running out of time. Okay, great, thank you. Self-regulation is a really fundamental skill set, and I'm going to mention this. It's super important. I think lately in some discussions I've seen, people are like, self-regulation is bad because it's about controlling yourself. Well, if we weren't able to do all of these things, like focusing on something, like when we were preparing these presentations, we were focusing on the job. So hopefully we can do at least a semi-good job. Goal setting, planning, abstract thought, adapting if something unexpected happens, prioritizing. If we weren't able to do all these things, which sort of together we name self-regulation, that would make our lives pretty difficult, right? So the reason why I'm mentioning this is because self-regulation, those skills are fundamental to helping us to make the good decisions that we saw earlier, right? And so the thing to notice about them is that, as it says here, these abilities are sensitive to individual contextual factors, which means if I'm hungry, if I'm tired, then I'm going to be worse at this stuff. If there's an environment that's stressful, like if I'm coming into a meeting and everybody else is like, oh, this stuff happened and what are we going to do? Then I'm going to be worse at this, right? And so if we're thinking about it in terms of dark patterns, the more we impede people's ability to employ self-regulation, the worse it will be for, on average, the worse it will be for their outcomes, right? Because they're gonna make less good decisions. They're gonna be able to not get such a good overview of the situation they're in. Okay. Right. As we said, like we have tons of examples of how you can exploit this knowledge to generate really horrendous outcomes. Genocide, war, things are happening right now, not just in history. But we can also use it just to, as we talked about earlier, push on some outcomes that are against what we want to do. If we spend too much money, if we spend too much time doing things that we actually wouldn't have done unless there had been a really clever designer or really clever builder of apps or something like that who stole our time in a sense, right? But it's not just that, sorry, we also have some good examples of how we can employ some of these things. So if you can play the video, just like the first bit of it.
Young Danes love the party. They are world champions, actually. And governmental restrictions are not keeping them from having a good time. This caused a dramatic increase in corona cases among young in Denmark during the summer of 2020. So how do you stop a whole generation from seeing each other? Well, you don't. Instead, you invite them to be part of the solution. We invited 11 popular influencers to come party with us. And that's not just a figure of speech. It was a party and an experiment. You see, Danish party culture among the young involves a lot of drinking, including licking and touching the same things, like a beer bomb, which is a perfect way to share saliva and nasty stuff, including seafood, with your friends. Now, if knowledge does not work, how about this stuff? In tests, we have found feces and high levels of bacteria on beer bombs. So we wanted to make the invisible visible to the naked eye and show just how far saliva really goes around, and potentially with what. In secret, our beer bomb was covered in harmless, invisible substance. After 1 hour of party, we killed the lights and music and turned on the UV lamps. The result was mind-blowing to our young party people, and their spontaneous reaction towards spot on. The story was shared by our influencers on their social platforms and instantly got a lot of attention, comments and reposts from the young audience. Reactions were pretty.
Can we stop the video?
Feeling.
All right. So I was a part of, oops. Okay, can we go back? All right, well, sorry. I was a part of the team that made this Corona campaign. Pelle Guldborg is a behavioral science expert, and he was also on this team. So we were tasked with how can we communicate about COVID behavior to young people, right? And everybody else was doing this. As we see in the video, we used the feature of disgust, right? We used this response of disgust, something that generates a really strong emotion, so people remember it, they think it's fun, they want to share it with other people. It becomes something that people talk about because it engenders a strong reaction. But it also played on some of these things about social status and identity. That's why we chose to engage this group of people, reality TV stars that I may never come into contact with otherwise, but that really mattered in terms of getting the message out, because there was some social identification and recognition going on with this group. So I show this as an example where this was a kind of a hard design problem. How do you get people to care, especially young people, to care about stuff that they may think is boring or is going to restrict their lives and all that kind of stuff that the health agency was promoting. But instead, then we used behavioral science very intentionally to play on these two elements among the four that I mentioned, to play on these two elements in order to hopefully make a better job of designing such a campaign. So my point is that it's not really that hard, right? All of you can apply some of these ideas in your work, and it's not that it has to be a mix and match, right? It's not like you have to use these reflexive responses together with something about decision making or self-regulation. It's also, you can also just zoom in on one of them and say, okay, for this particular problem that I have, maybe the stuff about self-regulation is super important. Maybe we want to help people in this situation to employ their self-regulation skills better. Okay, so I had prepared this case that we were gonna, or this question that we were gonna try out. Maybe we can try it out later because I think now is not the time. But I want to end up in this with this quick thought. There is no sort of clear-cut sort of way of applying behavioral science in an ethical way. There's no sort of a formula for how to do it. Do no harm is just not going to be good enough, because as we said, people could have conflicting goals. And so which of those goals are you going to support, and how are you going to support it? So maybe some questions to think about could be things like this, right? Are you making people feel inadequate? If you're trying to get them to buy something or whatever it could be, are you sort of undermining maybe their sense of self? If so, then you may be on the wrong track, right? In terms of the overarching topic of dark patterns we were talking about today. Are you trying to push people off their balance when they're making decisions so that the emotional side of them takes up more space? Ability to self-regulate is another thing that's super important. And it's important because it also has equity and fairness considerations. Not all of us are super good at setting a plan and following that plan. In a given population, people are going to be very differently sort of good or bad at these things. So if we have a service, if we have an app or anything like that, that's going to sort of prey on people's ability to self-regulate. It could be by creating confusing sites or things where the information is really hidden, the information that they need and stuff like that. Then it's going to affect people in an unequal way. So some people are going to be more easy victims of this stuff than other people. So equity is really, really important to take into consideration when you think about, am I using these powers, in a sense, these powers of design, which behavioral sciences, am I using them in a good way? All right, so with that, I'm going to end my talk and look forward to a great discussion.
Really interesting. And I'm still not getting through on this. Oh, yes, I am. Thank you, Lizette, for a really, really interesting talk, and really excited to check out the develop cards. And yes, we're definitely going to do something when they come out in English as well, because we need to. So the next speaker is a repeat speaker, because we have actually had Stephanie do a talk prior with us about UX writing, and I actually had to kind of poke at her and be like, Stephanie, could we get one of these talks to be about how do we do UX writing and these dark patterns, because I'm like, the written part is also so important, and I feel like sometimes the UX, the writing, isn't considered when we talk about UX design, at least in some places. So I'm really, really excited for your talk. Make it worse with words, how to turn deceptive copy into useful experiences. And I'm really hoping for a GIF or two. She had a full-on presentation with GIFs. Give it up for Stephanie.
Am I on? I am on. Okay, Helena, I'm going to disappoint you. There's not going to be a single GIF in this presentation. But I have colors and other terrible examples of deceptive copy that hopefully can entertain you, teach you a little bit. All right, I'm double mic'd. It looks like I have a connection here, but not there. Yoo-hoo. Yes. All right. Didn't know the screen was going to be so big. So much yellow. Okay, good stuff. All right, so as Helena said, I'm here to show you how to make it worse using words. And basically everything that Lizette just told you, apply that to a design. Somebody will launch it. Somebody will say, let's just finish the final copy. And then usually people have a tendency to just make it worse than the starting point. So that's the point of the title. I'm pushing really hard on the button. That's why. No, you know, no problem. I'll just stick around here. I don't have a need for movement. It's really okay. It's really okay. Everyone, this is what I look like. And if I lose my breath, it's because I'm 5 months pregnant, so half-baked baby going up tends to hit the voice at some point. Okay, so we talked about what today's topic is, at least from my point of view, using words, UX writing, and that is because I am a UX writer. My name is Stephanie, obviously. I do what I do freelance, which means that I get to meet a lot of different brands, touch upon a lot of different industries, which is a lot of fun. I also do more classic copywriting. I'm rooted in marketing, so whenever I have like bad stuff to say about marketing, it's okay because I'm sort of one of them myself. Yeah, so 50% UXer, part of product teams. The other half of the time I do marketing, and it comes in the shape of writing, talking, and teaching. Today I had a workshop for a lot of really passionate UX designers who wanted to learn a thing about editing. So we did that, and my voice is still fine after talking all day. So that's nice. Good for you, all of us. Okay, so the industries that I'm working in mostly, at least at the moment, is all the sexy ones: banking, insurance, pension, power, energy. All the stuff that was never born digital, but now just has to be digital. So that's a really fun task, and like for me, endless jobs and gigs within this within these sectors. So that's nice. All right. When do you call for my help when being a UX writer? So someone like me usually comes around to help guide users with words, to make them make the right decisions. Obviously, we're all talking about decisions today, but the words can have a huge impact, and hopefully I can convince you that later on. But another important task is also to ask a lot of questions, not just questions to get to know users, but also to get to know businesses, because we need to know both. We need to draw a line and make a map of expectations, limitations, everything that surrounds the entire user journey. If we just focus on one thing, it doesn't work. But you all know that as either designers or researchers or whoever you are, but that's also a writer's job. At least that's what I'm trying to advocate. All right. Yeah, finally, so mapping the user journey, I just touched upon it. Like, don't call me when you just have some replacement job for lorem ipsum, like you have all the boxes and the wireframes, because that's not UX writing. I don't even know what that is. It doesn't count. No, so UX writing is about asking all the right questions to help people guide. Just the way you do with design, just with words. What is deceptive copy then? Dark patterns, deceptive design. There are like many terms as to what's the same. I think to me, the whole like deceptive part of it makes most sense because I'm feeling like betrayed. Maybe even someone has a hidden agenda. I think that describes it pretty well. Some of the usual suspects that I see and that I take like so many screenshots of and like hide them, like save them for later, are like classic ones like false urgency, like really trying to like make people feel like now is the time to buy. Hopefully everything I say now, Anna, you will contradict later how to make people buy more. I'm like, let's have them buy the right thing and not just more, but let's see. Could also be passing the blame. For some reason, there's like a tendency to like shame people towards thinking that something that we did was their fault. Relates a lot to confirm shaming as well. I'm going to show you an example in a second. But also just button copy, like call to actions. For some reason, like the most simple, but yet again, powerful little piece of microcopy tend to be a place where people make it super confusing and sometimes even just straight up misleading by saying one thing on the button, but that's actually not what to expect when you push it. Then some of the more hidden gems, in my opinion. Some might say, isn't this just bad copy? Like vague errors, jargon, inconsistency. It might classify as well as bad copywriting or bad UX writing. But the big difference is that it's usually intentional when we are talking deceptive copy or like intentional dark patterns. So yeah, jargon using technical language that no one understands. Absence of options, like not showing something, is also considered deceptive or can also be considered deceptive. And then simply not telling the truth. For some reason, we like to lie. We like to wrap things in nice gift paper instead of just telling people, giving them some facts that they can work around with. Okay, so here's a great example. Huge also. This one, I love it because it sort of ticks all the right boxes. I mean, you have this, obviously the great confirm shaming, which I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with it, but what it basically is that what we are offering to you, if you are saying no, that's a shame on you because you hate good times. What a weirdo, sign up already. But it's not just that, it's not just the usual suspects. I see like a lot of jargon, maybe like giving you the lowdown. Obviously, you'd understand that if you're like a native English speaking in that area. But it's really not that inclusive. Could also just be like vague stuff like discounts, exclusive offers. For some reason, every newsletter you sign up to will always have discounts and exclusive offers. But like on what? Can we be more specific? And then there's the whole you versus me, like we will send you stuff, but you can count me in as like the CTA. Just like little things that maybe as a standalone, they won't bother you that much. But when you see this, there's just so many things going on. Here's a different one, maybe just looking at it, it's a bit more subtle. I think this one looks a lot like just regular UI that maybe all of us, it's part of our everyday life, right, somehow. But then you start reading the copy. And first of all, who appreciates prison lingo? I don't know. The whole, well, look who got locked up. Obviously, it's an attempt to be like funny and wit and have some personality. Then sharply followed up by "lucky you!" exclamation mark. Yeah, it's a one because yeah, as I said, it looks fine. It has like sharp, short headline, has like a nice rounded buttons with like an okay clear CTA, but then the rest of it just doesn't really work. Focusing a lot on the shaming and the prison part of things, where where there is the whole solution is inside the body copy, which is just shown that no one reads that little part in the middle. So why put the most important thing there? That's just weird. Okay, back to the yellow for everyone in the back. All right, so I'm going to show you 3 ways of approaching this. And I mean, you really don't have to be a UX writer to do any of this. You just have to maybe just use your common sense, be the user, sit down and figure out Are they really minding the tone? Is it the facts that I'm getting? Are they telling the truth? So we're going to go through them one by one. Hopefully it'll be useful for you guys. All right, mind your tone. Don't ask marketing. And again, I'm allowed to say, because I am rooted in marketing, I do it some of the time. The idea is just that marketing and UX, we have different agendas. Marketing is usually here to seduce and lead, traffic the way into the product or whatever you're doing. Product has a more like guiding way of not giving necessarily adding too much color to navigation, for instance. So they have different agendas, but they can be rooted in the same things. So it could have said like, but when you do, so when you do ask marketing, just make sure that it's because you want to be aligned on brand. Could be brand voice, brand tones, but don't ask marketing as like the only thing. Make sure that there's a writer or someone with a different agenda than marketing in the product team. All right, so describe the task, not the thing. And the thing can be many things, but the essence of it is just that the thing will usually be like a technology or at least some sort of noun, where the task is usually a verb, like something actionable, so you know what to do, and you help people do that thing instead of trying to educate people with weird, like either tech jargon or lingo. So try to focus less on what the thing is, but more like what should people do? It's like a rule of thumb. And finally, you can systematize the whole minding your tone with a tone map or tone spectrum. They come in many different shapes. Here is just an example of one. It's very brand specific, industry specific, so this one won't cater to everything. But as a rule of thumb, you can draw a pretty safe line from concise to detailed and from serious to fun, and start working your way around the different types of content that you have in your product. We're not going to go through all of them, but for instance, when doing onboarding copy, you'll see that in the far right corner. It's okay to make it a little bit fun because it's like a fresh start, like onboarding, motivational, but just make sure to like balance it with the amount of detailed information that the user needs to make the right decisions. So it's not just like short and fun. It also needs to be like detailed in the levels that are needed, depending on how complex your onboarding your product is. All right, framing the fact. If it sounds beneficial, it probably isn't. And I'm sorry to say that is a fact and it sucks, but we've sort of become accustomed that if something sounds like a good deal, it's probably to cover something else up. And that's sad because that's not how it's supposed to be. We've grown accustomed of that. So instead of trying to do like benefits that might come across as weird or desperate or like tap into people's expectations of you trying to hide other things when highlighting the first thing, is to maybe focus more on the truth, and we're going to get to that later. Yes, to avoid absent options, because what's not there can be deceptive too. And I think this one, I see it a lot in the like cancellation features. Like if you want to cancel something, it's made really, really difficult for you. I think all designers can relate as well, but like from a word perspective, we will always be looking at, so what does it say? Why is it so difficult? And the worst thing I think is, well, first of all, if it's hard to find, but then second of all, if it's a phone number or something, like you make it look like a self-service that you can do it. There's a button that says like cancel or something similar, but then the effect of it, or when you hit it, it's something about like, fill out this form, or we will contact you, or like heaps of ways to keep you to stay. That's not that great an experience, in my opinion. And finally, to frame the fact, you can use suitable nudging. And Lizette, you talked a little bit about nudging already. Everyone knows what it is. When I call it suitable, I guess it's like the opposite of deceptive. It's more like this is appropriate. I mean, you've been here, you've done something. We think this is what you want to do next, for instance. I think an example of this could be, I assume everyone here knows Slack, maybe even use it a lot. I see this one all the time because I put my status to away, but what I usually do is I open it because I need to find like links. I've saved like a lot of stuff for myself, so I open Slack, I'm in away mode, and then it always asks me like, you're constantly opening anyway. Are you sure you want to set to active? And I think what's suitable about this is that it's seen me do these like recurring actions of like opening. So I think it's fair enough for them to ask that I can like the primary button to be set to active. But the fact that I do have options to like, don't even ask again, or maybe just like skip for now, the no thanks. I think they do that pretty well. Finally, telling the truth. It sounds banal, but it can be hard sometimes. We all want to wrap things in a different wrapping than the original one. Sometimes we tend to interfere with the interface. Let's not do that. I mean, so interfering would be to create barriers that are unnecessary and lead people on a path that's not really relevant for them. When I say, but do intervene, it means that, okay, well, we have to make decisions. If we don't do anything, it's just negligence, and that's also just not good enough. So intervene if there is a need for it, but don't interfere with whatever people came to do. I think the intervening part, I came to think of it a lot when designing for mobile. A lot of the different sexy industries that I mentioned before, they are, well, first of all, none of them are born digital. They are made digital, and it's still not even like close to maybe 30%, 40% of their business. So it's prioritized, but it's not prioritized. So what usually happens is, here's a nice desktop version where we show you a lot of nice things. Here's a mobile version where we have not necessarily considered where to put the different elements. And if we don't do anything about it, I think that's negligence. But it's really difficult to figure out like how do we not interfere, but we help people like give them the hierarchy that they expect, like the resemblance of a desktop version. So usually happens there, happens other times as well. Okay, design principles. I know everyone does not have them, but if you don't, start making them. But stop and revisit, because I think that's usually also a nice exercise to just stop for a second. If we are making something that sounds off, should we just circle back to what we decided when we joined this company, or we sat down together as a design team and made promises of transparency or something similar? We all have principles or purposes we want to make relevant for our users. But one thing is putting them down on paper and agreeing like 2 years ago at a kickoff, but now we're actually doing it. So maybe just revisit things that you've already decided on together. That can be a good start. Okay, and then finally, edit ruthlessly. I think that's just my way of saying no one gets it right the first time. It's okay to just try around and maybe ask someone, how does this look? And then they will tell you if it sounds manipulative, deceptive, or something third. So it's okay to leave room for a lot of editing, and you do that by not starting with copy in the final hour, as we talked about earlier. Here's asking marketing and telling the truth. Sorry, marketing, if you're out there. Here's another fun one, and I promise no gifts, but maybe just like a fun screenshot. I'm not even sure which category this one falls into. I think it's false urgency because we're trying to make, but then I'm also not sure if this is even a feature that exists, or again, just marketing, having fun. However, once we're done laughing at it, I think this is also a perfect example of like, if you're a UX writer and you come and you get this task of like, how do we say this in the best possible way? The thing you do is just push back and say, we don't have this feature at all. It sucks. It's a really bad experience.
Thank you. Well, thank you for a great presentation. I hope a lot of you got really inspired and are like, okay, we gotta go home and like do some things and tweak some things. So what's gonna happen now is that we're gonna take a 13-minute break, which means that we will be back 10 minutes too. And I would like to challenge each and everyone who's in the physical room. First of all, you need to get up and move around because we need to get some like movement in our bodies. You've been sitting still for a while, but you need to find a person that you do not know. That's the challenge. And if you are not like a great networker, then I can borrow you this one. You can ask you, what is the greatest insight that you just got from the two talks? And then you can kind of kick it off from there. So you need to get off, like go into the room, get some water, and then start networking and meet some people. Yeah. And for all the people watching online, please, again, get off away from the screen, move around, get some water, so you feel a little bit energized. And then it would be awesome if you're in the chat while standing, could write what was your biggest insight so that you can also learn a little bit about what other people got out of these talks, because everyone gets something different. And that's really the beauty of it, of sharing our insights. Then we kind of learn from other people and their points of view. And yeah, see you 10 minutes too. So have a good break. Is actually the most like, not by like where you came from international, but the distance that she has traveled to get to our event. Because the next speaker is Anna, who is coming all the way from Gothenburg in Sweden. I'm gonna say more, but I just think that's really cool. Like she was just like really excited to like share her take on this topic with us. And she is running a UX group. So she's running a UX community in Gothenburg called Let's Talk About UX. Very action focused. I like that. Yeah, Anna is gonna talk about how UX design in online shopping, persuading the user to buy more stuff. Give it up for Anna. Oh. Da, 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 da. And now the online people can hear her as well. That's actually really nice. So, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Get to choose.
Hi, everyone. I'm just realizing that the pink highlight color is super popular today. So. Okay. Hi, I'm Anna, and I'm here today because I'm concerned about our tomorrow. So when I look around, what I see is that we are sacrificing our future for stuff. So what is happening is that we are taking a lot of our natural resources to make all this stuff that sooner rather than later find their way to the landfill. And this is obviously a very unsustainable and wasteful pattern, because we only have so much natural resources that we can take. And the more we take and the more waste we create, the worse our environmental situation becomes, which is already pretty bad if you haven't heard it yet. But for me, an essential and unavoidable first step toward a sustainable, better future is to reduce our consumption. So we can reduce the natural resources that we take and the waste we create. And today we are at a crucial point in time where what we do today and in the coming few years is going to determine which path we are going down on. And I think we can all agree that we don't want to go down on the upper path with the red lines. Okay, so now you must be wondering, like, this is supposed to be a talk about dark patterns. So Anna, get to the point. And I'm getting there. So here it is. Most not most, but substantial amount of this unnecessary consumption happens online. And that is our territory. That is where we, UX professionals, use our skills and knowledge to make a difference. But what kind of difference are we making today? That was our question when we started doing our master thesis research together with my thesis partner. And we digged into the relationship between overconsumption and UX design. And I'm here to report to you that today we do apply dark patterns, nudging, and persuasion in e-commerce design to help the user fill up their cart. So today we are part of the problem. And I brought you a few examples to illustrate how we do it today. So this picture is Shein's landing page. Shein is the worst fast fashion brand, if you don't know it yet. And the obvious thing that stands out first is that they are offering 4 different discounts already on their landing page. And if you look at the bottom row, you can see that they are offering higher discounts the more money the user spends. So in other words, they are rewarding overconsumption by offering like more discounts. The other thing that they are doing here is they highlight their 45-day free return policy to create this peace of mind in the user that if they buy today, they still have the opportunity to send the clothes back. So just buy today, really, that's the point, just buy today. Another example from Shein is their flash sale section. So the first thing that stands out, I think, is the countdown clock. So it creates a sense of urgency, and also this bar that shows the diminishing stop is also creates also a feeling of scarcity. And then we know that humans place higher value in scarce objects rather than abundant ones. So this is really Shein screaming at the user, buy now, because later may be too late. Another thing that Shein does here is that they are using anchoring. So highlighting the reduced price and also the amount of discount that the user gets. So creating this feeling in the user, making sure that the user understands that this is a great deal that they are getting. So they should really buy now. Another popular tool to use in e-commerce is social influence. And as Lizette said, we humans are really keen on our identity and status. So what Nike does here is they use user-generated content to show that our products are popular. People are buying it, and they are loving it. They love it indeed so much that they put it on their social media, and they are beautiful people. You want to look like them. So buy our product. That's the power of social influence. The next one, next example is from ASOS, and they have this selling fast tag that creates a sense of scarcity and also uses social influence. So the scarcity in the sense that these items are selling fast. So you must buy now because maybe tomorrow it's not going to be available anymore. And social influence in terms of other people are buying it. It's selling fast, then it must be a good product. And this is an example from Burga. The first thing I notice here is the green bar on the top. So this green bar reminds the user that they still have €5 to go to get free shipping. And this is a mechanism to reward overconsumption because the user doesn't necessarily want to buy anything more. They are already in the cart. Probably they want to pay, but they are reminded that there is a reward, €5 a day. So probably they are more keen to buy something more to get that reward. And now that the user is in this mindset, Burga makes it super easy for them to just buy one more thing. So they have this carousel on the bottom, and then with one click, the user can add whatever item they want. They don't even have to go to the product page to check out if this is actually a product that they want to buy. And both of these are very strategically placed and timed nudges exactly when the user is susceptible to these nudges. And when we are talking about timely nudges, I have to come back to Shein. They are the worst. They offer a present to the user just as they are about to leave. So the thing is that the user needs to spend more money. They have to spend 600 krona more to get this present. And they also have to do it quite urgently because there is a time limitation. And I can't finish this curated collection of persuasive UX without mentioning recommendations, because recommendations are really tailor-made to help users discover more things that they could buy, but probably otherwise they wouldn't have bought. And then also, again, making it super easy to just add this item without, like taking other consideration, just one click of a button. And then here is an example of Amazon using recommendation and social influence together, recommending things to the user based on what others have bought. So you might notice, and you might also already understand from Lizette's presentation, that these UX tools exist because we designers understand the user very well, and we understand their mind. We have behavior science, neuroscience, we have psychology in our tool belt to understand what triggers the user, how their brain works. So we can really create these experiences, make elements stand out that the user cannot not notice, and place these nudges very strategically, specifically when the user is susceptible to them. And on the other hand, we have the user who doesn't have tools to protect themselves against these nudges. So obviously this is a power imbalance, and the power is in our hand, designers. So we have to use this power responsibly and always question the ethicality and the intention when we are applying the nudges and dark patterns. So when we were doing our master thesis, we realized that this is a well-discussed topic. There are many articles and resources discussing how nudges and dark patterns and persuasion applied in e-commerce. And to our surprise, 99.5% were positive. So they were encouraging UX designers to apply these nudges to turn browsers into shoppers. So this shows that really nudging, persuasion, dark patterns in e-commerce design is just a tool to achieve business goals like optimization, conversion, and sales. So for me, it says, or what I see here is that UX design is not the root of the problem. It is really just a symptom of the underlying business model. But does it mean that UX designers can just throw their hands up and say like, okay, I'm not responsible, I'm just doing my job. I'm doing what I'm asked to do, which is fulfill the business goals. And in my opinion, no, that's not the answer, because as always, we are responsible for the impact our work has in the world. And right now, UX is part of the problem. Our work is an accelerator of unsustainable behavior. And as UX designers, we have power, we have influence within our companies, within our community, among our peers. We have a voice, we can come up with the ideas, we can defend these ideas, and we can advocate for positive change. I'm not saying it's an easy position to be, but we can do that. We have done that before. So what if we said no to designing for overconsumption And instead, we offered the option for the user to donate the €5 and get the free shipping instead of buying something more that they probably wouldn't have wanted or needed. Or what if we reminded them that they can save money, but by not buying something more and choosing paying the shipping cost instead of pursuing the free shipping limit. So I've been thinking about this topic for quite a while and working with it and reading about it. And my conclusion is that there needs to be a more nuanced and more widespread conversation around this problem, around this topic. And we need to start thinking about how UXers can contribute to creating e-commerce design where we promote mindful consumption instead of overconsumption. And here I wanted to reflect something that Lizette said before, that sometimes, or when we apply nudges, it's not like it's difficult to say if it's ethical or not. But I think there is a case when it's super obvious that it's unethical, when the intention of the nudge is, okay, an example. So what if a person really, really wants to buy all the fast fashion best trends? So that's very unsustainable. That's very harmful for the planet. So us, UX designers, is it ethical from our perspective to apply nudges and create e-commerce experiences where we make it super easy for them to do this unsustainable, harmful behavior? So in my perspective, that's a clear line when it becomes unethical to nudge for overconsumption. I just wanted to finish my talk with a quote from Mike Monteiro, because he said it much better than I can. So as designers, we need to see ourselves as gatekeepers of what we are bringing into the world and what we are choosing not to bring into the world. Design is a craft with responsibility. The responsibility to help create a better world for all. Thank you.
I hope that we're gonna have some people going to their boss and being like, hey boss, we should change some things. And it is really hard when you are working in consumerism where that is what you do. But I really think that there are ways that we can be be better for the planet and the future generations. And that is a responsibility that we do have. So thank you for shedding light on that. The next speaker is, for me, I'm proud to say, a member of CPHUX, which I'm really happy about. He came to me kind of last minute, so you might have seen like presentation slides of this without his beautiful face. But Amit is working as a senior UX designer at Mask, and he's gonna talk about the topic gamification, the new disguise to dark patterns. So give it up for Amit. Yay!
So I'm Amit, and I'm a full-time human based in Copenhagen. Cool. I'm a proud plant dad, and by way of Bangalore, now it's been 5 years that I live in Copenhagen. And I'm an Indian who is really bad at maths, but really good with the arts. I've always been fascinated with behavioral sciences. That's what kind of led me to choose design as a career path instead of engineering or doctors as any other Indian would do. The topic that I chose for this talk was gamification, the new disguise to dark patterns, because all of us are using certain apps which today have gamification included in them. And that is a kind of a disguise. I promise you this presentation is not a clickbait dark pattern in itself, but I'm trying to share some thoughts and experiences. So going back to 2016, I was in India working for an e-commerce brand. I was doing kind of the similar work that's been explained in the presentation before. And that was my first touch point to dark patterns. I was working in a team which was a spin-off from a UX team plus the marketing team. And our whole agenda was to build habit building and addictive applications or properties in the app. So that's when the first prototype that we launched were these small campaign-based games. So you had to kind of guess the sale price, or you had to tap certain number of times to get the delivery guy to a certain point. Or then during Valentine's Day, you had to mint certain points to get to a particular gift or a prize that you really wanted. So it was really hard because suddenly you already had a behavior that you're tapping, and suddenly the button would change to do not tap, and your points would get subtracted. So it was really hard to kind of get to a particular point to get a Gucci bag or any luxury item. So that was getting a lot of traffic. And suddenly my team also got funding. So we then were almost 14 designers now in this team looking at these habit building properties at this, as this team was now starting to be called. And that's when we started doing a lot of the patterns that were discussed in the talk previously as well. Most searched pages on the app, on the mobile, that these are the most searched pages. Let's create some FOMO with our users and show them that these are the most searched pages, you're missing out on something. Or most popular pages, or recently bought styles. Or then the last one where we came up with was personalized stories based on users' affinations. And that's where things started to turn a little bit fuzzy. That's where I started to feel that, business and marketing are starting to have a bit too much of a say in how these properties are governed in the back end. So the data is being used to kind of push you customized searched pages, customized popular pages, customized recently bought styles, or customized, of course, personalized stories. And that's when I was like, this is not right. And from nudging that all the three speakers have now talked about, I want to move towards nagging. That's what I started seeing, that we were almost nagging our customers now. From their mobile app, hey, there are 3 more items that you could pair up with this t-shirt, and that's the look that you can buy. From their iPad, you still have those 3 items, and you can buy that look on a discount, to their iWatches. So it was almost nagging, and it was becoming a bit of a dark pattern. And I was just like, okay, this is beyond something that I can really handle, and it's something that I don't want to be a part of anymore. So that's when we set up certain design principles, and slowly the team kind of dissolved. So that was the whole team when it got funded and kind of got dissolved after that. But then I was in the middle of these dark patterns, and I was trying to answer for myself that, okay, we created all these dark patterns, but there has to be a common factor which leads to all these kind of dark patterns. What are certain other examples that I'm seeing around? So dark patterns kind of exist everywhere around us. Like, we are just not aware because we are so used to of these. So from walking the complete IKEA store before you can check out is a dark pattern. Some of you might have seen these weight loss medicines that are sold with a slogan of be fit and reduce 10 kg weight in a week is again a dark pattern. So it's not only UX, they exist everywhere. Or my favorite, the classic 0% interest rate credit cards. and 4 points, 20% gray, boilerplate text showing all the terms and conditions. So that's the classic. So they have been existing. We just are so used to of them that we haven't really seen it. So then again, I really wanted to define what is this all about and where are we going with this? There has to be some kind of a common common word or common behavior that we are leveraging to kind of get to these patterns, or there's a common behavior in humans that we are going towards, which is being exploited for these kind of dark patterns, physical, digital, every space. So that's the word that kind of encompassed everything. Trustworthiness. As humans, think about it. As humans, we spend much of our time finding trustworthiness. In our day-to-day lives while doing tasks, our brains are continually assessing trustworthiness with the peoples that we interact with the services, or with the products that we choose to interact with. So we are constantly, directly or indirectly, assessing something about trustworthiness. And that's the common sort of a point that I thought about, that this is the common behavior, or this is the common underlying theme that's leading to exploiting the dark patterns, or exploring, or probably leveraging for certain good purposes as well. Now I wanted to kind of answer that, what are these parts that lead to this kind of a behavior? So the first part that leads to trustworthiness is integrity, where our brains are naturally tuned to kind of look for product or people or services which have the same motive or belief as us. We want to believe something that the product will do that. The product will do something that's in our mind. We want to believe the same thing. And that's why we start investing into that product. And that's why we start trusting that product. The second point that I thought about was competence. Looking for a competent product or a service. So of course, nobody wants to look at like a product that would say that we are not good at this. We are not good at repairing your cars. Nobody wants to buy such kind of brands, right? So we want to be able to use services which are able to handle the tasks in any associated difficulties in different required thresholds. So that was the second point. And the third point was capability. To be able to get timely outcomes at the expected level of satisfaction. So I need certain quality from this product, service, or the person who I'm talking to, the kind of quality that I'm expecting. So I want that, and that's why I'm starting to trust into that kind of a product. So that's where I kind of was able to complete my umbrella, that these are somehow the points that kind of lead to the trustworthiness that I was thinking about. And then how do we judge this trustworthiness? Trial and error and discovering new stuff, whether it's a new story element, new level, or new item in a game. So it's all about trial and error and discovering new stuff. So now that could be your shortcuts at IKEA, that you know there's a proper shortcut that you can go from floor 1 to floor 2 and directly to checkout. So that is a trial and error, and that's how you discover new stuff. Or it could be about 20 minutes spent on scrolling on Insta stories, or golden likes on Tinder. A lot of us would be aware of that. So that is also a trial and error and discovering new stuff. So that's kind of a nudge for you to sort of, hey, you would have missed these matches, blurred out matches, and you have these golden likes. You can use to open those new likes. And all of this is nothing but the base for gamification, because the user engagement is in quest for trustworthiness, as what I define, and that seals a relationship between customer, product, or a service. And that's where the business metrics also sometimes come into play, usually measured as recency, frequency, duration, virality, and also ratings. But then there is also the element of dopamine. When we start talking about gamification, there's also the element of dopamine. The thing about introducing this gamification in UX in all these kind of traditional applications is that every time a user interacts with a game-like behavior, it releases a very small amount of dopamine in their brain. Every right swipe, accepting every Nike run challenge releases that small amount of dopamine and satisfaction in our brains. But then, of course, there are always people who could exploit this to urge the users to give up somewhat more than they realize, or to agree to things that they perhaps wouldn't if they honestly understood the decisions they were being urged to do. So businesses kind of take advantage of this very element of dopamine and leverage that for their alternate purposes. They create deliberate solutions leading to cognitive overload. I think it's a moment of reflection for all of us. We all say yes to terms and conditions. We've all seen those lengthy pages. We are all user-centered designers. We all know that those terms and conditions are really important. Why haven't we yet made those easily readable or easily consumable? So those are kind of the business decisions that have overpowered our user experience designer protocols also. So we don't realize those. So long and laborious content, manipulative timing of the content, and misleading content buttons. So all of them kind of are nudges that the businesses want you to have so that you have a cognitive overload. And because they know as humans, we are mostly lazy, we will look out for an easy way out. And that's where the things go wrong. That's where you have buttons with wrong copy, which you end up pressing because that was your easy way out. And as humans, we really want to do that. Yes, I accept to everything. Or then probably say yes to all the cookies, and you really don't know what's going to happen because the timing of that was in between what you were doing. So you just say yes to all the cookies. So all of those parameters are kind of being misused by the businesses. So now I'll just dive into a few examples of dynamics and affordances used as dark patterns. The first one is muscle memory. Can everyone raise their hands, whoever's on Tinder or has used Tinder once in their lifetime? Thanks. Quite a lot. So I think a lot of us would be familiar with what I'm showing here. The context is love at first swipe, right? They tried to reinvent what it means to have a relationship in this digital era. What are we doing with this, all of these kind of instant meetings and instant matches leading to instant gratification and kind of having instant amount of dopamine in your mind. So they were really clever with that. And they also knew the principle of that instant release of dopamine. And the sort of you can say, dualage of enticing content is extremely effective. Sometimes this assessment is deliberate and sometimes this assessment is not. So sometimes you will also see while you have the muscle memory of swiping right, swiping left, whatever, you end up swiping on an ad. You end up swiping on something that you shouldn't be. And it opens up a new flow for you outside the app. So they've been using all these kind of small nudges, which they have based on sort of the dopamine that was already in your brain and it was doing its work. And then suddenly they showed you an ad, which you might not be interested in, and you ended up clicking. Mostly you will end up seeing what that page is before closing it, or sometimes if you are really not having it in the mood for Tinder, so you'll cross that page. Tinder has lots of features they developed all these new features also to get you keep swiping at any time. You can see a number of people who have already liked you in a blurred image. So that's also kind of a gamified kind of asking you to, giving you a little bit of a nudge that there are people who have already liked you. Do you not want to see them? So it's very similar to the cart nudge, right? Where there were articles in your cart and you were like, oh, you can get them for discount. Do you really not want them? So it's almost the same kind of a nudge, but in a very different context. Tinder will also notify you when you've swiped left, and then you kind of want to undo that swipe. So they've kind of monetized that also. They're very clever with that now that we've developed this muscle memory of swiping left or right, and now if people are swiping too much left, we can leverage that to kind of monetize that and say that if you want to undo that swipe because you accidentally swiped left on someone, you need to pay it to us. So that's another way that kind of Tinder has been using gamification and all this concepts into their benefit. The next sort of dynamic that I want to talk about is anticipation. Increasing user engagement through related content. I think we are all aware of these Instagram or TikTok or Pinterest's behavior of long, endless scrolls. Like we sometimes, I have friends who've opened Instagram apps, but scrolled for 15 minutes, then realized that, oh, I've been on Instagram for so long, then closed that app and then opened it again for no reason. They are so addicted to it, of mindlessly kind of swiping, scrolling through that their brain has that overload of dopamine at that level, that they are not able to rationalize that I should stop. I should start doing something else. So that's where that point has reached where they are not able to decide that. Or even with Netflix. So mostly you're watching Netflix sitting on a couch or somewhere. The next episode is starting in 10 seconds. So it just like immediately starts. So it is giving you already a behavior that I am going to make you binge watch. So it will start playing unless you get out of your blanket, you get out of your couch and comfort zone or whatever who you are, and then go and press spacebar, or on your phone, just control the app. So you have to do additional, and you only have 10 seconds for that. So they figured that out. How do we make people consume more and more content and let that dopamine high keep on building up in our users? The third point and the last dynamic that I want to talk about is addiction. The first app that I use quite a lot for my Danish lessons, not doing so well, but also it's about Duolingo. Duolingo has this really cute gamification that if you're doing things right for quite a lot of time, you get this streak, or like it's nothing that you actually get in like usual. It's not like you're getting money. It's not like you're getting points or something that you can spend in a supermarket or whatever. It's just virtual gratification. You're just getting like a streak. And you get so invested into that suddenly you're okay to pay certain amounts to continue that streak. I was at a conference just last week, and there was this person who had a 400-day-long streak. And due to being so busy in the conference, he lost that. And he was feeling so bad and heartbroken that I don't know what to do now. Like it was almost like his life is over. I'm like, this is just another level of where we've reached with this. And games like Candy Crush also sometimes, right? Like, of course, it's a game, it's not a gamification, but also these kind of games also have these nudges. You need to sort of buy additional gold to kind of continue to next stage. Otherwise, you need to wait certain time. So it is also playing on that whole amount of that instant gratification versus delayed gratification, which might be a good cause for them, because you'll keep coming back to Candy Crush and see that, hey, is it available that yet? Can I play this level now? Can I do it now? Can I? You'll keep on opening the app again and again and seeing that till the time you get it, or then you will buy into using your credit card and just buying the next stage. So a lot of people play into that kind of things as well. But I think I don't have a positive or a negative response to it. It's just that we all need to be aware as UX designers that what is our job. Like as doctors are kind of saving lives, right? I think there is something that we should also be kind of looking into, as you also brought up, right? That it is our responsibility to be ethical to the profession that we are in, right? And Pulowski, in one of his papers, he writes a really long quote, but bear with me, I'll just read it out. At heart, the experience must retort to sustainably to the user's need. Those requirements not always be recognized or articulated openly by the users themselves. So you might not get all these requirements that the users are saying in your user interviews very directly. He further says that it is, after all, the task and responsibility of UX practitioners to expose and innovate for those unspoken needs. So we need to think about in between those lines and kind of innovate in those. But the design must also be aligned with an essentially wholesome or a positive outcome. So I think that's one line that I read in 2017 after leaving the e-commerce saga completely, and I really resonated with it, that it's not about just going with what the users have said or what the business stakeholders have said. It is also about looking in the layers of what these user researchers have come back with. What were these interviews, and what was that hidden or the unspoken need that we actually need to cater to? And that's where I kind of was thinking about this yesterday, that you can't really design trust. There is, like, of course, in physical products, there are ways where you can design affordances, where you can have trust, but in digital experiences, it's really hard to design trust. But honest design can definitely help create it. And that's something that I really live by. Right now, I'm working in an organization that is world's largest logistics and shipping organization. And we really want to be honest, and before I say that, and we really want to be honest with our invoices, payments, and checkouts. That was the area where I was working earlier. And we set ourselves design principles, as you brought up as well, right? Honesty and transparency. So at any point of time, whenever we do any design iterations, we make it a point to go through our design principles. Are we adhering to the openness, showing them the calculation, or showing them that we really don't have this data, you'll have to wait for a certain time? So are we transparent about all of this? So I think that's really working. And it's similarly, I feel like it's responsibility of all of us to kind of recognize that our profession can very easily be misused, but also, like, we have to be true to our profession and true to the users' needs that we are catering to. And with that, thank you so much.
So I hope that we are ready to kick off our panel discussion here. And yeah, the first question is, what can I do when my work clients want me to make dark patterns in their designs?
I think that's a really great question. I've ran a design studio where I've had clients ask me a similar thing. And one of the things that I've really done is shown them a design with the dark pattern that they really wished for, because it was a design studio and I'm making, definitely, that is where I was kind of making money. And also shown them a design that this is the good user experience. And also given them kind of a place for reflection that, okay, using this dark pattern, you make money right now, but in the long run, the users will be able to see it, somebody will be able to see it, and that's not good for your long-term goodwill. So where do you want to be? So giving them a moment of reflection is what really worked for me. But yeah.
I mean, in the somewhat unlikely scenario that the brief just says make dark patterns, or what do I know? I think there's a nice task and sort of also a responsibility of always pushing back and saying, fair enough, you have this idea. It's usually not just to make dark patterns, but to make money of some sorts, short term, long term. But maybe start asking really good questions if you want good answers. So good questions being, what's the problem we're going to solve? Because then if you find common ground, then you have the responsibility as a designer, writer, something to avoid the dark pattern, but still give the client what they want. So I think it's, if they ask for that, maybe in a less direct way, just push back and ask some good questions that'll help you find common ground. And it's your responsibility to make it work.
And let me just add in as well, like if your client at a client meeting is like saying stuff and you're like, this smells a bit like a dark pattern, because they're obviously not going to say it up front, right? Talk to your leaders, talk to your managers, because it's, again, like I've heard of agencies in Copenhagen where they've been like, we will drop clients that will ask us to do that because, first of all, we can afford it, but also we don't want to work for people like that. Or at least your manager should also have the choice to affect how we do things and yeah, how to deal with situations like that. So I think it's important to also reach out for support. Cool. The next question is, what is the darkest pattern you have experienced And then except for MitID, which is the Danish ID servicing that everyone in Denmark basically uses. So what is the darkest thing you have experienced?
Is MitID that bad? Okay.
So probably someone who has a grudge here.
I'm not sure what the darkest pattern is. I get the question, but it's really difficult. We have all probably browsed through thousands of examples before coming here today, so we have them somewhere up here. But yeah, I'm not sure. I don't have anything specific in mind at all. Because what makes it a dark pattern? I mean, I saw all of your ways of showing like how for people to save money, and then if you bought more, it was more, you could save more money. But I mean, isn't there always like there's for every like dark thing there is, or like deceptive thing, there's also like a benefit. So what if someone was like, oh, that's great, I found stuff for 900 kroner, so that means I'll just save more. I mean, yeah, I think it is a matter of perspective sometimes as well.
I've tried it once where I had to buy an airline ticket, and then I had like the price, then it was like, this is the price. And then I like went through, and the further I got through the flow, I was just like, why did the price go from this to this? Like, and then I had to like revisit it and like really go back step by step and really look at what did I write. Like, so it was like making the journey so much longer and more like, the cognitive load went up, but my price went down. So that was good at the end. But I've also tried where I literally couldn't get the price to match what I had been told in the beginning. And then I just went somewhere else. I was just like, life's too short. Where can we find the cool toolbox that Lizette told us about?
That's pretty simple. You can go to developtoolkit.dk to get the Danish version. I think we'll maybe send out
we'll do something when
link
the
or
English
something like
version
that.
comes.
And we'll let you know when the English version comes along as well.
We're gonna do this LinkedIn post.
Sure.
Please, if you could add the link there, then that would be really, really great.
Can I just add also as well to the last question? I think really when we talk about dark patterns in general, as I also mentioned in we have to look way beyond user experience in the classical stuff. I mean, think about troll farms, right? I mean, think about disinformation to influence elections, for example. There's so many things that are going on that use designers, behavioral scientists to create really bad outcomes. But I also think it's important to distinguish sometimes between the outcome, the means and the ends, right? Because, for example, let's say we have a really positive, as we would construe it, end goal, which is, for example, to reduce electricity consumption. Some of the means that have been found from behavioral science toolkit to have an effect there is to use social shaming, social comparison, in a sense that's like, for example, you can see how much does your people in your neighborhood, people who are comparable to you, how much electricity do they use? And they are essentially better people, better for the environment, etc. Right? So we know that social comparison matters. We know that this idea of I'm not better than the norm, I'm actually worse than the norm. That doesn't change everybody's behavior, but it certainly can affect the average person's behavior. So in this case, we are using a tactic, a means that could be construed as negative, right? Shame, social comparison. We're making people feel bad about themselves in a sense, but with a good purpose. Is that the right choice? So that's what I meant about maybe there's no safe way to be ethical, but we have to consider both what are the ends we're trying to achieve and how are we achieving them. We have to make sure that whatever we do, we are okay with both of those things.
Awesome. Cool. So the next question is from CPHUX. Is a pattern made dark by its form or its intention? For instance, would Shein be light design if they use the same tools to sell sustainably produced clothing? I think, Anna, that's right up your alley. She's just like, yes, yes.
I love the question. Yes. Yeah, I was when I did the presentation, put together the slides, I was like, this is a very complex topic, and there is no black and white, because of course, like, for example, I had the example in mind with the social influence, like user-generated content, of course, can be helpful for people to make more mindful decisions. So coming to a product page and seeing actual people wearing a product, and like seeing this is how it looks on a person, not a model, and then it helps people make more mindful decisions. So of course, like these tools that I showed in the presentation, like that, there is no black and white, and that's why my approach is that yes, it's based on the intention. So, and then huh?
No.
What happened?
There was a person on Slido being very funny.
Okay. I missed that. So yeah, for me, it's all about the intention. And then I wanted to add something that I heard from two of the presenters, that we are talking a lot about the people's needs. Like we are using nudges and dark patterns to address the people needs, or make the restrict people to achieve their needs or goals. And that's where I think we should be a bit more nuanced, because that's the user is not the only stakeholder in this. And of course, I'm thinking about the e-commerce and overconsumption. But when it comes to consumerism, designing a shopping experience, of course, the planet and the people who are making the clothes and getting underpaid, they are also the stakeholders. So it's not only about the user fulfilling their needs. It's also about the other stakeholders. But okay, I killed the vibe. So. Next question.
No. Yeah. Does anyone wants to add to this?
I can probably add. I think this is personally my view on when I was also working with e-commerce, right? So one of the first things that our moms or like anyone teaches us is like not to lie or not to deceive anyone and be truthful to the things. And I think that's the same thing, even if it's a sustainably produced clothing or if it's anything, but if the user really does not want it, we shouldn't really be trying to kind of sell them that, because ultimately it's going to come back. And just think about that entire life cycle, that if that product got delivered and then it's going to be back, was the sustainably produced clothing even enough? Like, because you produce so much carbon emissions in getting that product shipped and then back to the warehouse. So I think, yeah, just stay true to your roots. And I think you will kind of get an answer to those kind of things where you are in a very sort of dilemma between that, should I do this or should I not do this? So there's very like easy answers to that.
I think it's one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is like this thing with like, we buy some clothing and then you're like, yeah, but you can return it for free. And then I know people that like just get a lot of stuff and then they know they're going to return it. And I'm just like, there should, that item should be increased price-wise. You too is like rising with that. And honestly, I hope as well, like when we do travel, like think about what are you packing and what are you packing that you're not using, because you're paying, the planet is paying for you to transport your shit back and forth from vacations or travels or whatever. So there's like these things that even though you didn't buy those extra pair of jeans, the carbon footprint is still like up there, right? So yeah, no, sorry, that was just my rant. How do you balance business goals and the use of dark patterns? One day we will have more mics. So become a member so we can buy more mics.
Yes. Okay. So I think I think it's not true that there is this trade-off between business goals and sort of beneficial or the opposite of dark patterns, right? I mean, it completely depends on what the business is. It completely depends on what you are trying to do. I have personally mostly worked in sort of social impact space and social innovation space myself, and that is a deliberate choice. I think it's like, damn, go work for a company that does great things, or an organization that does great things that align with your values. I mean, yes, it's a tough job market, but there's also a thing about collective power. If we vote with our feet as design professionals or as people who work in this space, and if we increasingly deselect working for companies whose purposes don't align with ours, I think we should do that. We have to think of our work not just as professional work, but also as activism. If we want to talk about this stuff, we also need to walk the talk, right? So I think that's super important to keep in mind. I also want to say something a little bit about like the stuff with the cancellation process, because I remembered that. So as an economist, I think it's a practice called this price discrimination. Discrimination, the word sounds bad, but it really means that people are willing to pay different things for different prices for the same thing, right? And so when companies are doing that, they're kind of just trying to figure out which consumers are willing to buy my product, but maybe at a slightly lower price. I will say, as an economist myself, I use this stuff deliberately to get a lower price. I will cancel my subscription for stuff because I know that they're going to offer me a better deal, and then I'm just going to stay with that low price, right? So it's also about consumers do have sometimes the power to use some of these practices to their own benefit, right? So that's also a part of it. I will say that, yes, there's a lot of stuff that can confuse us and manipulate us as consumers, but we also have, like, if we understand these things, we can game the system to some extent and use these patterns against the people who are using them against us, right? So that's another way to be not just an activist, but also to be an informed consumer. Yeah.
So go be informed consumers. I want to say that if you are working at a company where there's problems with dark patterns, like being here tonight, that is also making a difference. Like being that is a responsibility that I think we have as well as designers, to continuously learn and expand our knowledge and take responsibility. But often responsibility comes with knowing more. So again, thank you for being here tonight, and like make sure that you talk to people about like these things. Ethical design is very, very important in our business. Stephanie, which arguments do you use to push for telling the truth when your client wants a deceptive copy?
That is a good question. I actually took the mic from you because I wanted to support something else that you said before. So I'm just going to do that real quick, and then I'm going to answer that brilliant question. One thing, I guess, is to avoid maybe working for those companies, but wouldn't it be nice if you could join like someone and then like join a company that maybe didn't live up to your values, and then maybe influence those business goals instead? Because I mean, we cannot just like avoid these companies forever, but yeah, I don't know. I've never tried infiltrating a business myself, but I don't know. Maybe it could be like some fuel to the fire if you have the energy. So
they will always find someone. They will always find someone
yeah.
who's willing to do the job.
That's what I'm
Unfortunately,
thinking. Yeah.
again, it's like sometimes they'll just increase the pay.
Maybe.
No.
No. So that was just to wrap up on your brilliant argument. To push for telling the truth, I mean, again, rarely, and maybe it's because it's the industry that I'm working in, like pension, people are nice to each other, like helping you save money, insurance. I rarely get these like, let's try to deceive people. I guess it happens when they try to push for like something that we want users to select. I guess that would be like like a preferred selection of something. What we did recently with an insurance company was to revisit this thing about design principles, because actually there weren't really any, so it was easy for me to say let's have a look at design principles, and then I just had the chance to like make them. So go out there and make design principles, and if they're already there, challenge them, because I think what people want is just a good old mellemregning. they want like the math in between, like how did we get to something, like the problem solving part of it. No one wants to do deliberate bad copy or like deceive people, but we have an idea of like, this would be a nice option to select for you because of this and that. But we all need this, yeah, we talked about it before, like common ground and a shared language. I think that's what's usually missing. And design principles can be that shared language because it goes across business needs and what designers are doing and writers are doing. So I found that really effectful lately. Hope that answers the question. Probably there are other ways to do it, but that's a recent case study that worked very effectively. So feel free to copy.
Awesome. Akhil is asking, is there a way we can implement gamification in our UX in a good way? And if it's possible, I think, Amit, can you give an example?
I think, yeah, there are lots of good ways. I think one of the ways that I recently saw on Siri's website, which is the immigration website, that there's a huge cumbersome form for renewal of a passport, but then they have divided it into like stages. You really feel accomplishment that you've completed stage 1, and you feel complete when you have completed your stage 2, stage 3. So that's one way to kind of implement gamification in good way. And there are many, many different examples that you can find on these kind of experiences. But also we've been talking a lot about like sort of mobile and websites and all those kind of things, but also in physical spaces also. I was speaking to someone from city of Copenhagen, and one of the things that he brought up was the tilt in the dustbins on the cycle tracks. So that is also a slight gamification way of indulging people to use those dustbins, but also a very practical way that when you're biking across, that angle is pretty perfect to throw a banana peel, a cigarette butt, or a beer can, because they party a lot, or anything. So I think that was a really interesting way where he brought up that, okay, this is how you can actually bring gamification in physical environment and UX. So there are many such examples around us.
Any of you other guys? You said it?
Yeah, so when we did the COVID-19 campaign, we also used gamification in some sense, that we created different kinds of competitions where we invited young people to submit their ideas for hanging out, having fun in a COVID-safe way. This was the height of COVID in 2020, and people could win different great prizes, like a concert with Tessa, like a private concert with Tessa, and like so, and it generated a lot of energy, and it generated a lot of responses. So you can use games in tons of good, positive ways, right, to inspire people to come up with new ideas. You could also use gamification in learning settings, right, in schools. But so here a thought is also that we can take it away from the individual level and think about teams, right, using gamifications for teams to pursue goals, right, to inspire collaboration, to structure gamification in ways that require like if it's a group of school kids, structure the game in such a way that everybody has to contribute something, right? So it's not just like the one person in the group who's the dominant student who runs away with everything, right? So there's so many examples of how you can use these things that you also were talking about, that can be used for a bad purpose, like the muscle memory, the addiction, the reward streams, the social recognition, but you can also use it for tons of good purposes. It's just about, like, they are everywhere, literally, these opportunities. So I think like that would be my one takeaway, that there are so many ways to flip these things around and pursue really good both business opportunities and sort of more ESG opportunities out of this.
Can I just bring another example? I just thought of another example back from India. There was this design studio, small design studio working on social innovation projects, amazing work called Social CPHUX. And they did a really beautiful project where they were trying to figure out where should a gas or the LPG cylinder store be placed in a village. So how should we know that it should be placed in north of the village, south of the village? Where is it? So it was a very simple solution. Since a lot of people in that village were illiterate, so they used gamification that they told people that when you're in a group of 5, just dial this number, or when you're in a group of 1 or 2, dial this number. And they had a live sort of a heat map. So the entire village could actually see where were all these places where people actually gathered. And that was the data collection gamification way of collecting all of that data. That this is where the LPG cylinder shop should be because it'll be accessible, or most of the people visit that place. So there are many, many such examples that are out there.
Last question of today. It is illegal to make dark patterns in California and the United States. What are your thoughts? Should it be applied in Denmark? Law.
I can't say a lot. I haven't studied any of those laws, but I do know there are a lot of strict guidelines in US about dark patterns and when they are reported. Of course, we've always seen Facebook being in trouble, or we've always seen Elon Musk kind of doing different things about being in trouble, about deceiving users to do certain things. So I think there are a lot of rules in US. I don't know if there are rules in Denmark, but I don't know, somebody who studied these kind of laws in the past? No?
I have not studied law, disclaimer. But I do want to touch upon the question because I know that they have this rule in California, and with as with everything else in the US, they're very like state oriented, and which is nice for them, I guess, because then they can be like liberal and do their thing in like on one coast and one thing on the other. But I think in general, Denmark is a little bit different. We believe generally, and I'm being so very broad right now, but I have a sense that in Denmark we have like, we don't have to legislate about everything. We do that sometimes, but it's not necessarily like the means to success necessarily. So I think I don't think necessarily should be applied in Denmark to like answer the question. It is a yes or no question, but to nuance it, I think it's also a cultural thing. We have other ways to work around it. So I think legislation is not necessarily the Danish way of doing it.
I think, yeah, you brought up a really important point. So I was speaking to somebody and they were talking about, why do you live in Denmark? And one of the things that I really am comfortable with about living in Denmark and trying to relocate my entire life is because of the trust economy. And it all goes back to the entire thing that I was talking about, trust. There is a different culture. There is a different way people think about certain things. And that's the trust economy that we live in Denmark. So maybe there are different ways in which these dark pattern regulations can be applied, but we have to really look at the cultural aspect, as you rightly mentioned, in that. In probably US, the sort of legal ways work, but maybe in Denmark, we have to really think about different ways because it is about the trust economy.
And with that being said, thank you so much. Give it up for the panel.